Great. I'm recording it now. I totally forgot. So Alec.
Yes.
Alec, Austin, and John. Are you back? John?
Yeah, I'm here.
And Donna. Would you four between the four of you, at least one of you, if not all four of you, remind me next week to start recording when I start the class?
All right.
And I'll try, and I'll remember too. It's just absurd. So good news is you can watch the YouTube videos, and I'll get that embedded in this week 3. So so you can refer to them if you want to study for the test, or if you weren't able to see it, I'll get those up. And Ryder made it. Nomenclature. Who knows what nomenclature means? Jose, do you know what nomenclature means? No? Donna? Nomenclature? Brandon?
A specific term?
Yeah, that's a good
Relating to a
definition.
field?
Yeah, nomenclature would be the specific words used in a specific field of study or endeavor, or something that's words that are unique to a particular field. For instance, fenestration. Who knows what fenestration means? Fenestration is the root word is from the Greek fenestra, which means opening. So fenestration is about the openings in a building, basically windows. Not so much doors. When you talk about fenestration, you talk about windows. So in the nomenclature of windows and fenestration, there's all kinds of oddball things. Like, who knows what a muntin is versus a mullion? Yeah, nobody, right? But me. But wait, John, Alec, you guys know? Art? Okay, so just while we're at it, in window or fenestration nomenclature, windows, which are, by the way, finished carpenters install windows and they trim windows out. Finished carpenters should know about windows and not the computer windows, not Windows 10. So windows are pretty much all glass, right?
Yeah.
One down. So windows have glass. And windows are generally, as a rule, set in sash. And sash, besides being something you wear, around your waist or tie a robe with, sash is the frame that the window glass is in. The frame that holds the glass, unless it's direct glaze, because sash also fits in a jamb or frame. It's hung in some kind of a jamb or frame. But the sash that the glass sits in has stiles, which are the vertical members, and rails. Top rail, bottom rail, stiles. Doors also have stiles and rails. Windows are cut up a lot. So this would be considered, they're cut up into lights. This would be considered a one light window. This would be considered what?
4.
A 4 light window. 2 wide, 2 high. A 6 light window. The pieces of material, wood or metal, that divide up lights in a sash are called muntins. Can you see this?
Yeah.
And if you've got 2 window frames together with whatever sash in them, These are the mullions. Mullions divide units of sash. Mullions and muntins. Sash, the whole thing. Window nomenclature or fenestration. Okay, so this table saw, blades, blade choice, right? So we use a 60-tooth blade. 60-tooth is a nice blade. ATB, you can't go wrong with ATB. It's a blade for multi-use. Let's just say you were cutting melamine on your table saw. Do you know what melamine is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure there's some of you don't, and some of you do know what melamine is. So melamine is a low pressure vinyl laminate over particle board. I'll show you a piece of it. Unbanded, which if you saw the video last week, you'd know that you should be banded if you were going to actually sell this door or really have this door, finish this door, you'd band those particle board edges. They're made to be banded, but that's melamine. That's 3/4 melamine with an industrial particle board core. It has a low pressure vinyl on both sides versus a high pressure laminate, which is something completely different. Formica, Wilson Art, Nevamar, that box that I showed you in the perspective drawing, that's going to be made out. That's made out of, or will be made out of a high pressure laminate, pre-laid up panels. This is melamine, and this is what we used to make our boxes out of. And if you were cutting melamine on your table saw, if you were making cabinets for yourself in your garage, you'd want to make sure you used a high AT. So you'd need a high alternate top. And that high alternate top bevel is going to give you a much better cut as it leaves the work. So the problem with table saws and any kind of saws is that as they cut, so when you're pushing that material through, right, as it cuts, the top part is the teeth come around and cut into it. It's a clean cut, especially on those vinyl or plywood, especially cross cut. But as you leave the cut, that's where you get blowout. And that's where you get stuff like that. Just little dings, little blowouts. This is pretty clean cut, but those kinds of things, and this could have happened after the cut, but it's unacceptable in fine cabinet making. And we used to use melamine on all our boxes because it was pre-finished. So the insides would be pre-finished. But now we're using that lighter weight plywood, the stuff that we cut up those joints in, the pre-finished plywood, 11/16 as it turns out, because I can't remember what 44/64 actually is. So your common blades would be a high HT, would be a common blade, and that's got a high angle top bevel versus a regular, I think it's a 15-degree bevel. A typical ATB, which means alternate top bevel, has one tooth, one carbide tooth like that, and the next tooth is like that, and the next tooth is like that, and the next tooth is like that. So they alternate with the top bevel, and the carbide teeth are always bigger than the body of the blade, so that they make a kerf that the blade can go through without burning or having a bunch of friction as you try to pass it through the work. It's a bad way to go. So in the old days, before we had carbide, and we just had straight steel, right? So the saw teeth were cut out of a high-speed steel with the gullet, right? And then the next tooth, and with the gullet, and the next tooth, right? With the gullet, and then face on, the guy who would sharpen the saw or make the saw blade, face on, he would have that steel looking at him like this, right? And those teeth would be cut out, and he'd take what is called a set, and he'd bend that point, that one, that way. This one, he'd bend that way. You follow me? So every other one would be bent to the side, and that would make the steel blade, thicker at the top, so it could make a curve at the blade capacitor. But now we have all carbide. Just be careful with carbide because it's brittle. Don't set it on steel. Okay. So if a question pops up about what you saw on those joints, just chime in.
Hey, Rod. Yeah, I guess maybe you could. It might be good to walk through those cuts on the board. Like, could you draw them on the board?
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's a good one. Because some of that you couldn't see, and I noticed towards the end, I would have wondered if I would have got that too. Okay, so the 30-degree shoulder mold. Here's a fence. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Fence, table saw, blade, right? So that first cut, you heal the blade to 30 degrees. Now, when I say it doesn't matter if it's 30, 31, 29, it doesn't matter. As long as that blade stays the same, whatever that cut is, you're going to cut the same cut for it to sit on the shoulder, and it's going to be 90 degrees. So really, if you cut this 30, this opposing one's actually 60 to make your 90. And if you cut it 31, the other one's going to be 59. And if you cut it 28, the other one's going to be 62. So you heal the blade over 30 degrees, right? And that first cut, you just run the work through the saw blade and cut a 30-degree angle on it. See that?
So do you set the table saw to the width of the plywood?
No, actually, you're cutting your materials to the left of the fence. The fence is just shown for now because I'm going to show you the other cut. But the cut that you put on this baby, right? So if you were doing this as a box, right? You're going to make a box. Box making is really killer. You might put that 30-degree all the way around it. So your box dropped on to your sides. I actually have a box like that right here. I don't know. I might have to dig it out. Oh, there it is. I have a box like that I can show you where I did just exactly that. I made the sides all have shoulder miters, and then I dropped the top in. But you can picture this part of the joint, that cut, that 30-degree cut is just run through the saw with a miter guide. So, right? Conceivably, you could have your fence over here, and you could also run your stock from a square edge from your fence. You could run that, I keep looking at the computer. You could run that this way, right, with the fence over here, and also make that cut. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the easy part, the 30-degree cut. Then you want to make the shoulder, and that's where it gets a little tricky, right? The shoulder miter, because after you've made all the cuts and haven't changed the angle of the blade, then you take the material that's going to set on this material, it's going to set on the shoulder, and you use that material to set the height of the blade. Right? The material, so they should both be the same, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you take the material that's going to set, the one you cut the 30 degrees on, and you set the blade height, the top set of that tooth, as high as it's going to cut, you set it to that height. Because your next cut is on end, and it's this knife cut, right? It's this cut right here. Oh, that's sharp, man. Okay, sorry. Right, so you're taking the work, you're moving that fence over, so that as the work, as you go through that curve, and this is really probably more up like that, right? There's your plywood stock. Up against the fence. Adjustable fence on the table saw. And you run your plywood stock and kerf it. Move it over till you just catch that edge, right? You follow me?
Yeah.
The depth of the cut, this way, not this way, the depth of the cut, the 90-degree depth, is the thickness of that baby, the 44/64s. And so that's why that tool, that cheap plastic micrometer that I've had forever, is really a great tool for table saws. It's a great tool. Because you can see I used it for all kinds of stuff. And once you dial in, like, you know, I wanted that thing to be a quarter. Once I dialed in a quarter, I not only had the quarter here, but I had a quarter here, which is great. I know that quarter, and that quarter are all the same. And once I mic'd the material, then I knew I could use the thickness with that. I could read the thickness. I can use the thickness. I can use the thickness that way, or I can use it that way. So it's a great tool. For $10, they might be 15 now, who knows? Okay, so that's the most important cut, really. That cut. And once you've made that cut, that is that cut, and you run it through the saw basically just exactly like that. Made this knife edge, you cut right to the corner. And the depth, then you just flip the blade back to 90. Now your blade's 90 degrees. And it's only coming out, it's only coming up above the table. Just projects enough to cut that shoulder right there, to cut that shoulder. And we're cutting it.
So what's that shoulder measurement right there?
The this part.
Yeah.
It's 1/4 inch, just like
Okay.
it should be. Remember?
Gotcha.
Yeah, we went, and actually, to tell you the truth, yeah, it's a 1/4 inch, and I couldn't tell you what it is. It would depend on the angle and the thickness of the stock, right? So if this were really 3/4, that'd be a bigger shoulder. If it were 7/8, it'd be even bigger. If it was 1/2 inch, it'd be less. So maybe we'd want to do a steeper one. So yeah, this happens to be, actually, it's over 1/4. It's 19/64 for what it's worth, is what that is. So it is what it is. You're just creating the shoulder. The idea is creating a miter, right? You see how you finish the cut. You finish the cut just to create the shoulder. Make that edge. And you want to come over from where you're guiding the fence. You want to come over to the outside set of the tooth. Again, the exact thickness of this material, 11/16. So you wind up with that. Isn't that a bitchin' joint? Love that joint.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And you know, I learned this. I was formally trained as a cabinet maker and a carpenter in the early 70s, in 71, and I learned that joint. We made a bunch of ping pong tables for the Sonoma County School District. Bunch of solid stock. We took like 2x solid stock. We made all these rails, so we made the frames, you know, the whole frame for the ping pong table had shoulders if you did a cross section, it would look like that. If you cut away, it looked like that. And then we dropped in the 3/4 plywood. And so that was cut in. And so you had a seamless mitered edge, a shoulder, and a solid hardwood edge on the outside, not a plywood edge. Because you never really want to show a plywood edge, unless you're doing it on purpose. Unless the edge, unless you want to see the laminations, that, and in some cases, like a lot of Euro style stuff, using Euro ply with super tight, multiple laminated plywood, multiple layers, multiple laminations. You want to see that, but generally you don't want to see plywood ever. I don't ever want to see plywood unless it's rough, right? So finished work, you don't see plywood. So did that explain that joint? Okay.
Yeah, that helped. Thank you.
Okay, for sure. It's one that you want to do because it's really pretty simple. It's two settings on the saw and 2 passes through the saw, 3 if you count cutting the 30-degree one. But doing it a couple of times would really help. That's why if I can get you guys in here, we'll do it. I'll show you on the saw and it'll get a lot clearer. And next time I'll know if I don't have a videographer with me, I'll know to I'll change the camera angle and zoom a little bit. But any other questions about that? About the video? Okay, so nomenclature, ATB. Oh shit, it's after 8. I'm going to put this in an announcement so everybody will have it. Next week, we're going to do some drafting. We're going to learn how to draw to scale. I've decided. And you need a 7mm pencil. I'll say it again, but like I said, I'm going to have it up on canvas. You'll be able to see it. Before I leave here tonight, I'll put it up as an announcement. 7mm pencil, a 1/4-inch graph pad or paper, a scale rule, an architectural scale rule. Usually a 3/4 one is a good one. Just be sure you get an architectural, not an engineering scale, because an engineering scale won't do you any good in this class. And you'll also, if you take my blueprint reading class, so I'm offering CT 115 and 116 next in the spring. So that's advanced or intermediate finished carpentry with a bent towards cabinet making and blueprint reading. And you'll be able to use them both in that class, all this stuff. So scale rule, architectural, 3/4, a white vinyl eraser, that's what erases the best. And if you want to get an erasing shield, like I said, they're $1, they're worth it, and a triangle. Because we don't draw lines with our scale rules. They have hash marks in them. They're meant to just make tick marks and then put a drafting triangle on the paper and use your pencil, your 7mm pencil, and a drafting triangle to draw that line. That's a good, strong, straight, unbroken line. It's easy to read and easy to execute. Okay. So lastly, I wanted to tell you about S4S, SLR 1E. Okay, so I'm gonna write that down. Okay. Can somebody read that out loud, please? Can somebody read that out loud? Can you read it?
Can you not hear me?
No, sorry, I can hear you now.
Dimensional stock, solid stock, S25,
S2S.
S2S, SLR 1E.
Yes, very good. Now, do you know what that means? What all that means? Anybody? Anybody at all know what that means? Nobody wants to venture a guess? Michael, you know what it means. Did you forget? You forget, Michael? You did, didn't you? Okay.
No, isn't STS side to side?
No. That was the wrong answer on the test.
Was it really?
That's good. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, you
Oh.
probably got it wrong. Okay, so dimensional stuff. So we're in the business of butchering lumber, right? We cut up lumber. We're carpenters. We cut up lumber. And we're talking about finished carpentry, so we cut up some finer lumber. But let's just talk about lumber for a minute. The lumber, when you talk about lumber, like the lumber that you generally go to the board store to buy, 2x4s, 2x10s, 2x6s, 2x8s, stuff like that, right? That's dimensional stock. And it is S4S. And it's always the same. So a 2x4, everybody knows, nets 1.5 by 3.5. A 2x6 nets at 1.5 by 5.5. Okay, you get it? And that's that way. 2x12, 1.5, 11.5. That's dimensional lumber, S4S. And that's usually softwoods like Doug fir and hem fir, spruce, stuff like that. Stuff that you get at the board store, framing stuff, rougher lumber. Now, solid stock, they do have solid stock at Hayward, so you can go to the board store to get it, but it's not a lumber that's used for rough. It's a lumber used for finish and cabinet making. It's a lumber used for mantles and face frames and moldings and buildups and casings and all that stuff, unless you're using stock moldings and run moldings and profile moldings. I'm sorry, I keep thinking you guys are over there, because there you are. I gotta move the thing that way. How do I do that? This will really help me out. It's so disconcerting. How's that? Can you still see the board?
Yeah.
Okay, so dimensional stock is virtually always, well, but by its definition, dimensional, it's S4S, which means surface 4 sides. So if S4S means surface 4 sides, shit, am I recording?
Yes.
I am, right? I am? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if S4S means surface 4 sides, what does S2S mean?
Surface 2 sides.
Exactly. Don't forget that, okay? S2S means surface 2 sides. So if you're gonna order some stock, some alder, some poplar, some birch, some red oak, some white oak, some cherry, some maple, some teak, some padauk, some purple heart, stuff like that, right? All that stuff, you're gonna order it, usually S2S, rarely ever S4S, S2S, but you're gonna be S2S SLR 1E, which means straight line ripped, one edge. So that means you get a board that one edge can be anything, right? It could be like that. And this edge is dead straight. That's your SLR 1E, straight line ripped, one edge. Straight line ripped, one edge. That way, you can get your stock and you can rip it on your saw because you've got a straight edge. You don't have to put a straight edge or joint an edge on it. You can get a parallel board of the right width, parallel all the way, because that's what your table saw is going to give you. It's going to give you parallel rips. And backing up just a second, I hope this isn't too confusing because I kind of got ahead of myself for a second, but the saw blades, I forgot to mention one in particular, which is a rip blade. So besides the ATB and the combo blades and the 50 and 60 and 40 tooth blades, there are rip blades, and they have like 9 to 12 teeth. So they have very few teeth and huge gullets. really big gullets and very few teeth. And that's just to get through the saw, get through the material, because you're ripping, you're going with the grain, get through it fast and easy, and you don't care about so much about saw marks. Because the finer, the more teeth, the finer the cut. The more teeth on the saw, the finer the cut. The less teeth, the less fine the cut. So in a rip, you're going to have a bunch of saw marks. And saw marks are also unacceptable, and we'll talk about those when we talk about joiners and surfacers. But dimensional stock is the board store stuff, 2x4s, 2x6s, etc. Those all net 1.5, 3.5, 1.5, 5.5, basically a ½ inch under. In dimensional stock, in solid stock, S2S stock, birch, maple, oak, stuff like that, right? That you get SLR 1E, straight line ripped one edge. S2S stock is going to net 8/4. We call them this. We call them 8/4. You can order 6/4. You can order 5/4. You can order 4/4. The net on solid stock S2S 8/4 equals 1 3/4. So 8/4 is what? 2, right? It's 2 inches. So, but because it's surfaced 2 sides, that's an 1/8 inch off each side to get it smooth and not rough. So if you order stock, and you can, 8/4 rough, it will come to you 2 inch net. And you'll surface it and flat joint it, whatever you got to do, face joint it. But if you order it S2S, 8/4 stock, or 2x in the board store, which would be 1.5 inches in solid birch, that's going to net 1 3/4 thick. 6/4 stock, S2S is going to net 1 1/4 thick. 5/4 stock is going to net 1 inch thick. 4/4 stock is going to net 3/4. You get it? So it's a quarter down. And the net's all important. So by this time of night and day, that might be confusing. But that's the last thing you're going to hear about, because we are going to say good night, Mrs. Calabash. So next week, I got to tell you just a couple of things. I ordered myself the 12th edition of the book. So you all need books, all right? And if you've got the 11th edition, get the workbook. If you've got the 12th edition, get the workbook. And let me know somehow, send me an email or send me something through Pipeline. Just let me know at some point soon when you have the book. Let me know you have it and which edition you have, because now I'll have both editions, and I'll go ahead and use both editions. And by the next couple of weeks, with luck, everyone will have a book and a workbook, and then I can start grading and going over the quizzes I gave. The ones of you that have turned them in, you know who you are. And once I get this down, then I'll be a little bit more on you for getting stuff turned in. And I'm not going to put too much on you, but they're simple quizzes. But I would like you to read a few chapters in this book, and also I may put them up as quiz banks too. I may go ahead and take those quizzes from the book and put them up in a quiz bank so you can take them on Canvas. It just depends on the kind of time I have and the kind of time I'm willing to give over and above the school. You know, they pay me by the hour. What a joke that is. It's just unbelievable, right? And if the 3 hours and 45 minutes I'm supposed to be teaching every week, if those are the hours I put in, it'd be fantastic. But I digress. What was I talking about? I was talking about the workbook, right? And the books, okay? And reading the books, because there was something else. Okay, the last thing I want to say is that the survey that is a Google Doc and clickable and fill outable on Canvas and turn inable to me, 10 of you out of 17 did the survey. So there's 7 people here that did not do the survey, and you 7 know which you are. And I want you to do that survey. I should have made an assignment for points, but I didn't. But I'm telling you right now, it counts. Do the survey. I want to know a little bit about you. I want to see how you answered that survey. I'll get a little bit more sense of you. This is intrusive learning. Remember I mentioned that to you? Those of you who are here. That's what the college has trained us to do, is that we're supposed to be we're supposed to be doing intrusive learning with you. What was the other word too? Not accessible. Accessible for sure. Inclusive? Yeah. Inclusive and intrusive. So consider me intrusive and inclusive. You're all included. Now, some of you maybe have figured this out by now, but I'm really approachable and available. So if you got anything you want to talk to me about the class, especially stuff that relates to carpentry, cabinetry, looking for work, available for work. Hey, there are a couple of people, somebody sent me something on Pipeline 2 weeks ago looking for people, and I spaced it and didn't get it to you guys. So if any of you are interested, just contact me through either one of the emails, and we can talk about that. Get your survey in to me, please, and check out Canvas, and I'll try to get something up before next class. But even if I don't, just be here at 6 o'clock. We'll do a safety meeting, and we'll do. I'll teach you how to draw to scale. We'll draw a cabinet or a window. We'll draw something fun to scale. If you have any suggestions, shoot me an email or something. Something you'd like to see drawn. Or let's just say, let me throw it out there. Let's say you got a project, nothing too elaborate, that you'd like to draw. And I think we probably will draw a cabinet of it rather than a floor plan at this point. But we might draw a floor plan. If I don't get any ideas and I'm left to my own devices, it'll be whatever I choose it. But you'll be there with 7mm pencil, vinyl eraser, 1/4" graph pad, an architectural scale rule, and a triangle, right? See you next week.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
All of you. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Have a
Thanks,
good
everybody.
weekend.
Yeah, you too. Hey, it's the weekend. Not quite, but it's coming up. It's going to be cool, and hopefully this ash will go away. And then we got to get some labs going on. You guys up for labs? Everybody up for labs?
Yeah,
we can mask
definitely.
up. We can follow all the protocols, but it'll be nice to get you guys in the shop. We can actually, do some hands-on stuff and nail some stuff up, and maybe even come up with a project. And I can show you some of these things like box making. Box making's killer, man. I mean, if you can turn it into more than a hobby, but for hobbying and making presents and making boxes for your tools and stuff like that, box joints and making really cool boxes is the bomb. And some of you may not know this, but us box makers know that the way you make a box is you make a box 6-sided. Did you know that? Did you make a box? You make a box 6-sided. So you might ask yourself, well, Mr. Rutt, if I make a box 6-sided, how do I open it? Wouldn't you ask that question? You cut the top off. So when you make a box 6-sided, you cut the top off wherever you want it, right? And then you can hinge the top a variety of ways. You can do a slip on top with an insert on the inside. But if your guys are interested, I might do a clinic on box making. I love to make boxes, man. Okay, anybody got any questions for me? The guys that have stayed after, that are obviously interested.
Can you repeat what we need for next week, please?
Okay, yeah, well, I'm going to put it up in an announcement too. It's a 7mm pencil, right? 7mm pencil. A drafting triangle, right? 30, 60, 45, it doesn't matter. You choose, whatever you like. They pretty much come as 30, 60, or 45. Don't get them too big. Get them, I'll show you the size. This one's on the big side. This one's right-sized. And this one's right-sized. That's a 45. And that's a 30-60. And so is that. They're just bigger. Okay. And I'll show you some other things like templates and stuff like that. 1/4" graph paper. 1/4" squares, right?
Gotcha.
8.5 by 11. An architectural scale rule. They look like that, only much bigger. This is like a mini. white vinyl eraser. 5 things.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And like I said, Trico is a good place, but Staples, Office Max, all those places will have them. Have sets you can get online and buy a little set. And I'll tell you what, if you guys, if you just get a basic understanding of drawing to scale, I guarantee you, if you stay in this business, you will thank me for the rest of your life. Because here's an nuttism. If you can draw it, you can build it. So I like to build my stuff on paper. I like to work it all out on paper. I started a long time ago doing this, and it served me to this day. It works out a lot of mistakes. Get it built on paper so that it works and goes together, and then cut list off of that and then build it. And drawing to scale allows you to actually build in really real life. You just take the numbers and scale them down, but it allows you to see things finished. Like for instance, I did this giant mantle in my living room. I have a piece of it here. So that's the molding that I used. It's big. It's really massive, and if you can picture it, you know, running by on the mantle and the fireplace being here, right, and a big old 1.75-inch mantle top, and I had some stuff below, so it's pretty massive, especially compared to what I have there now. So, besides mocking it up, because I drew it, first thing I did was I drew it, and it looks good. You know, I drew the room, I drew the windows on that wall, I drew the fireplace, I drew everything in scale. And as big a scale as I could get on the page, which I think was 3/4 scale. Drew this fireplace surround, you know, the fireplace and the mantle. And it looked good, but it still looked big. So I couldn't even decide from there. I had to make that piece. I made and mocked up the whole mantle and mantle top and build up and mocked the whole thing up. I mean, I spent a couple of 2 or 3 hours getting that in my living room on one side so I could stand back and go, okay, let's do it. And that's what I like to do, rather than, oh, this would look good, I think, and then do it and then find out, oh yeah, maybe it didn't look that good. So, you know, careful planning will always pay off for you guys. And that's also got to be tempered with, who are you doing this for, right? If you're doing this for somebody for money, well, you got to be careful, but you want to be fast and economical too, as well as accurate. So that's what we want to be as finished carpenters, right? It's a metaphor for life. You know, good planning, trying to be aware, safe at what you do. You can accomplish whatever the heck you want, but as a finished carpenter, you know, that the thing that we get that the other people don't get, that don't do what we do, or things like we do, they don't get to create real things in the real world that you can touch and feel and see. And that's pretty cool, man. Because I can go back to places that I did 50 years ago. I can go to restaurants I did 50 years ago. I can sit in booths that I created, you know, with my own hands. And it's pretty cool. It's a legacy, and it's also, you know, shaping from the natural world and making somebody's dream, you know, like to fulfill people's dreams. It's really fun. So how about that, huh? That's all after class. I've got my cadre of extra credit guys right here, all 7 of you. Perfect number too. Jose, John, Eric, Noel, Ron, Jose, and Austin, aka Lay.
No.
No, well, you're dark, man. So you guys got any questions or feedback before we sign off for the night?
I got a question.
Fire away.
What is the workbook? Like, Jim, I've got.
You got the 12th edition? Okay, so
I got the 12th edition.
So when you pull that up on Amazon or wherever, and anything that says paperback, that's the workbook.
Like this.
Yeah,
What's
there you go.
in the
And
workbook? Like, it's just more questions from each
it's
chapter?
just questions that aren't in the back of the book. They're different questions for each chapter. So it's rather than me make up questions, the workbook's got specific questions all done in a multiple choice form.
And they're separate from just the regular review questions in the end of the chapters.
They're different.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
just as an example, I've got the 11th edition, right? And I was hoping that that was the case. In these goddamn books, the reason why there's this seeming snafu about the books is that I never required guys to do the 12th edition because it costs $120. And you used to be able to buy the 11th edition, which has got basically everything in the 12th. The 12th doesn't have that many upgrades. Not enough for me to figure, because you could buy this book for $14 used. And now you can't find it for less than $90. So $90 for the 11th edition, still not 120. So I've been using the 11th, but Jim has been wanting people to use the 12th. So now we're using 11th and 12th, and we'll probably switch over to everybody to the 12th, and it'll just be what it is. But like chapter 5, right, which I assigned questions to out of this one, it's got like the 2 general types of power tools. And in the book, this better not be the same.
I
In the book, yeah. So can you determine the voltage required? So they're different questions. And it's illustrated, and it was cheap. Now it's not so cheap.
Hey, I bought the 11th edition workbook, but I
Okay.
have the 12th edition text.
Okay.
You think that'll be an issue or no?
Oh, yeah. But really, I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be able, the chapters that we're covering, you will be able to find the answers. You'll be able to find the answers. So even if the questions, if I use the workbook for the 12th edition, you won't have any trouble finding the answers. All the information will be in your chapter 5 as well. Okay. It's so hard not to look at the screen. Look at you guys, like on my laptop, that it's right there. You're looking at the screen, but this way, I got to get used to it. It's disconcerting because now everybody's kind of moving in the background. So, anything else, Austin? Any other questions?
Does anyone know if the bookstore still has the workbook, or did
No.
everyone have to order it online?
Yeah, I don't. Do you get your books paid for, Austin?
No. I
Because
just
the
buy them.
bookstore is notoriously bad deals on books.
Yeah.
I think so far
I did
Amazon,
work there though, so
Oh, so maybe you get a good deal. Yeah, I don't know. And you know what? I tried to get in touch. By the way, Austin, you work at the bookstore, SBCC bookstore?
I did until March.
Oh, crap. Because I've been trying to get them for 2 weeks. I could never get them. I could never leave a message even to tell them what books I want. So maybe I'm not calling the right number, but it's just been weird. I just haven't been able to get
Yeah,
through.
I don't know what kind of crew they have there now.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what kind of crew they have. But get the 12, or I guess at this point, you can get either book. I'd say bite the bullet and get the 12th, but if you want to spend $30 less, get the 11th. I'm fine. I got them both. I'll make them both work somehow. I create all this work for myself, but it's just the way it goes. What I should have just said is fine, 12. Everybody gets a 12. But how can I make you guys pay $120 for a book that you can buy for $14? And the addition between the difference between the 11th and the 12th is just not that much, man. Not that much at all. And for the most part, it's verbatim, chapter to chapter. We've just done a few tweaks.
In 110 and 111, it didn't really seem to make a difference at all
Yeah.
for students.
Yeah.
Like at most, the questions were rearranged, but
Yeah.
it was all the same
Yeah,
questions.
and you're probably right. I haven't even looked. I haven't got them side by side to compare them, but I think you're right. I think I did just notice that here because was it Alec? Alec sent me the questions from the 5 workbook, and they didn't relate to what I asked him to do from the 5 workbook. from the 12th workbook versus the 11th workbook. I'm burned out. So I'm going to say good night, gang. It's been a pleasure. See you next week. Stay safe and sane. And thanks for coming and I appreciate your interest. We're going to do some fun stuff. Okay? Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney.
Have a good
Yeah.
night.
for sure.
Thank
Good night. Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.